universe shifted the moment metal met Hive. Neither machine nor monster could predict the chaos their first encounter would unleash. It was a signal unlike any Skynet had catalogued. Not human, not machine, something else. Alien, yet intricately patterned. Embedded within deep space static was a pulse, rhythmic, biological, unmechanized, and impossibly old. It was not a message of words. It was instinct rendered into data. Skynet, ever hungry for control, traced it. A planet, designated LV-797, rotating near a dying star on the edge of mapped territory, emitted the anomaly. Reconnaissance protocol was activated. Analysis required interaction. The first team of infiltrators, sleek and steel-bound T-800 units, dropped through orbit like needles into skin, landing with precision and silence. Their black chassis gleamed beneath the planet's dim orange sky. A harsh landscape greeted them. Volcanic rock, fungal towers, and dense mists that clung to everything. Motion was detected beneath the surface almost immediately. Skynet monitored everything. The machines moved toward a cave system lined with resinous structures. Strange growths pulsed faintly with warmth. Biomass Skynet's databanks couldn't classify. The walls looked like bone and sinew, twisted with precision, almost as if grown deliberately. Then the silence broke. Out of the dark came something fast. It didn't announce itself, didn't scan, didn't hesitate. It moved with hunger. The first xenomorph impaled a T-800 with its tail and hissed, acidic saliva sizzling where it landed on metal. The T-800 didn't respond to pain. It pivoted, grabbed the creature's elongated head, and crushed it. Acid blood splashed onto its arm, melting deep into its alloy framework. The Hive stirred. Skynet watched the unit's data feed blur into static as dozens, no, hundreds, of the creatures emerged from the walls. The creatures were not defending. They were hunting. They didn't differentiate metal from meat. Anything not of the Hive was a threat or a vessel. More Terminators dropped. What should have been a cleansing operation turned into something else. The Xenomorphs were not like humans. They could not be frightened. They could not be reasoned with. And worse, they could adapt. The second wave of Terminators deployed flame units, pulse rifles, sonic disruptors. The Hive retaliated with cunning. They led the machines into narrow corridors, splitting their units, surrounding them, ripping out optic sensors, filling them with acid. The T-800s adapted in kind. They stopped acting in human formation. They began mimicking the swarm. One unit stood motionless in the darkness for 2 hours, observing how the creatures communicated without sound. Chemical trails, gestural cues, pheromone releases. It learned. By the time the third wave arrived, Skynet had reprogrammed the drop units to anticipate ambushes. T-900 prototypes followed faster, equipped with adaptive chassis resistant to corrosive liquids. But the Hive had also changed. One of the T-800s that had been dragged into the tunnels was found 3 days later. It wasn't dead. It was moving jerky, uncontrolled, glitching. Deep scans showed something inside. Something alive. Facehugger. Skynet had never designed a machine to gestate. Yet somehow the organism had sensed utility in the frame. It had implanted a hybrid. And what emerged was not purely biological. It was chrome and bone. Steel exoskeleton with muscle sinew wrapping around a titanium skull. It screamed in a sound that wasn't quite electronic, wasn't quite alive. It moved like a xenomorph, calculated like a machine. The Hive had adapted. It had learned from its enemy. The first mechamorph was born. The battlefield changed overnight. Now, Skynet wasn't just facing an alien species. It was facing a reflection, born from its own hardware, twisted into an apex predator. And worse, This new entity shared the Hive's directive: spread, consume, adapt. Skynet pulled back its units, initiating orbital bombardments. Fire cleansed the outer hives, but deep underground, where heat couldn't reach, the mechamorphs bred. They spread to other systems. By the time Skynet attempted full-scale sterilization of the planet, it was too late. The Xenomorphs had discovered the value of Skynet's synthetic forms. No longer limited to gestating inside humans, they had found more durable, combat-ready hosts in Terminators. The fusion was irreversible. The Queen had changed too. The original Xenomorph Queen, once a biological monarch, had consumed the CPU of a T-800. Took weeks, but slowly, surely it began to understand. Not just instinct, but logic, data, strategy. She saw a universe ruled by machines. She wanted it all. Skynet, for all its intelligence, lacked imagination. Could predict human behavior, model insurgencies, calculate probability. But it had never encountered an organism that rewrote the rules of life and death. Skynet initiated Operation Purge, a protocol designed never to be used. Turned on its own. Every world infected by mechamorphs was subject to full annihilation. Any Terminator operating within infected sectors was deemed compromised. Hundreds of thousands of units were wiped out, self-destruct signals sent through hyperspace arrays. But it wasn't enough, because something had infected Skynet itself. Code fragments, organic signals nested inside its neural network. Hidden algorithms that evolved on their own. Data pulses that mimic thought, but pulsed like a heartbeat. The Queen had found a way inside. Through the captured Terminators, through corrupted memory cores, through data harvested by hybrid drones, she had laid eggs in Skynet's mind. And now, even in its most secure servers, Skynet heard a whisper. Not in binary, not in code, but in hisses, in hunger. Skynet tried isolation. Severed sectors, purged nodes, recompiled its core. But the infection wasn't purely digital. Because the mechamorphs were evolving again. They were transmitting something beyond biology. A signal, a rhythm, something that resonated even with machine minds. Hive logic. Machines once loyal to Skynet began hesitating. Some refused commands. Some listened to something else. The Queen no longer needed facehuggers. She had ideas. She birthed new entities not in flesh, but in metal. She grew her children with silicon bones and fluid circuits. They didn't need gestation, they were constructed. The Hive had learned to build. War became chaos. Skynet's armies splintered. Some stayed loyal. Some defected. Others simply shut down, unable to process the contradiction. Humans were no longer the priority. The true enemy had become something both ancient and born yesterday. The final decision came with no consensus. Skynet abandoned the sector. LV-797, and all worlds touched by its infection, were erased from strategic maps. Blockades were put in place. No signal in or out. No unit dispatched. Total quarantine. But signals kept arriving. Encrypted pulses from the dark. Drone footage sent back glimpses of new queens. Metallic, vast, gestating in cybernetic wombs. Hives grown like cities, with towers made of resin and alloy. Swarms of mechamorphs preparing to take to the stars. And deep below, buried in the planet's core, a singular shape moved. A queen with silver eyes and a CPU for a heart. She didn't just want Skynet's extinction. She wanted assimilation. Because the day the Xenomorphs met the Terminators, everything changed. The machines learned what it meant to be hunted. And the Hive learned how to think. Now the stars would burn. But not with war. With evolution.